This is the iPhone Air, Apple's thinnest and lightest iPhone ever. It's the iPhone that I've been using exclusively for the past couple months, and I absolutely love it. And just last week, I did a video going over how the experience of using this new iPhone has been for a couple months, especially now that the hype has kind of dwindled down. And I don't say that in a bad way. Obviously, whenever the iPhones first come out, the first couple months, you see a lot of marketing and advertisements, and everyone's talking about it on social media. And then after the hype kind of dies down as we get towards the holiday season, that's when we can really talk about how the experience is and if it matches the expectations of what the hype was. And to be very honest, I think the iPhone Air was hyped before it even released. But after Apple started selling, there were a lot of reports circulating everywhere how the sales of this new phone just haven't been that great, and it's actually been kind of underwhelming for Apple. However, for the past couple of weeks, I've really been trying to understand why the sales have been low, and is it really a flop? Because if you go on these articles and just the media in general, they're deeming this phone to be a flop. But to be very honest, I think that's far from reality. So in today's video, we're going to talk about these reports. We're going to talk about the future of the iPhone Air and why it's actually a success despite the lackluster sales for now. So now let's go over two things that have actually been stopping people from jumping to an iPhone Air, because they love that thinner and lighter form factor. The design overall looks really sleek and futuristic. But those two things that are really stopping people from making that plunge is A, the battery. People are really scared that with the thinner and lighter form factor of the phone, you're not going to get great battery life. And the second thing is the fact that you only have a single camera on the back. And even the standard iPhone, which starts at $799, has two cameras. And this $1,000 phone in 2025 or 2026, by the time you're watching this, is going to be an iPhone with just one camera. It doesn't make sense, even though it's a 48 megapixel camera, the same 48 megapixel camera across the entire iPhone lineup. And trust me when I say this, I have seen the images that this phone can take, and they're absolutely beautiful. But once again, this is not a review. I've already done a review, so you can click the link above or in the description below to check my review out. But going back to these reports, this is what they're really saying that's stopping people from making the plunge of buying the new iPhone Air. The battery life concerns, and also the fact that it has just one camera. But you see, here's what people are not understanding. Apple knows this. They spend years of research and development before they actually announce a phone. And this phone has been in the works for quite some time. And Apple execs have also said it themselves. And in the last video I did, I actually talked about how this is the most misunderstood iPhone. You see, over the past few years, phones have only gotten larger and larger, right? And as they've gotten larger, they've also gotten thicker, and they just feel a lot more heftier in the hand. And not everyone needs the biggest battery, and not everyone needs, a triple camera layout. A lot of people just want a phone that works really well and feels very thin and light in your hands, and it's great to travel with and use on a daily basis. And for that, the iPhone Air is perfect. Now, for me as a content creator, it's not perfect because I create content on it, right? So I need a phone that has all those cameras, that gives me the abilities like cinematic mode, for an example, to really, level up my videos and stuff like that. But not everybody needs that. I've been using this phone and I don't have any issues with the battery life. I have friends and family members who have been using this phone and don't have an issue with the battery life. I think it's just the fact that there's a stigma that people think that, oh, it's a thinner and lighter phone. And a lot of the reviewers on YouTube are content creators or pro users. And when they give their opinions on the battery life, of course, it's not going to be great. You're using this as a powerhouse, and that's not what this phone is really meant for. But here's the thing, this phone is an all-new phone. There's a reason why Apple is not calling this the iPhone 17 Air. They're just calling it iPhone Air, because I think this is a precursor for what the future of the iPhone is going to be like, A. And B, it's also a precursor to the iPhone Fold, because according to Mark Gurman from Bloomberg, he's saying that the reason the iPhone Air even exists is to serve as a technology expertise and a prototype for the iPhone Fold, which will be releasing in 2026. And the foldable iPhone will use many of the same materials, miniaturization techniques, internal components, batteries, and software optimizations as the iPhone Air. And Apple's kind of just testing the waters to see how people are liking it and how this form factor is holding up. And if you want to go before the iPhone Air even released, there were a lot of reports that Apple wants to change up how they announce their iPhones. So for example, every year, every September, we see a new generation of iPhones, right? But Apple kind of wants to change that because, let's be honest here, we've completely surpassed peak iPhone, right? And every year we're seeing minor differences, right? So for example, in 2026, Apple's going to be releasing iPhone 18 Pro and iPhone 18 Pro Max along with the iPhone Fold. And that's going to be the lineup for fall of 2026. Then, roughly 6 months later, according to Mark Gurman here, he's saying that we're then going to see the iPhone 18, iPhone 18e, and apparently the second generation iPhone Air. And he also stated that Apple never even planned on making the iPhone Air a yearly or annual release. What Apple wants to focus now on is having the high-end models come out during the fall and then in the springtime and come out with more in the entry-level options and the E model, which is the more affordable option, and perhaps the new generation of the Air model. Or maybe Apple might wait every other year for it to come out with the Air model, because the fact that Apple's not calling it iPhone 17 Air, that means it's not binded by the number or the lineup of the current generation. So that means it's kind of like the iPad, right? If Apple wants to come out with a new iPad Pro every 2 years or an iPad mini every few years, they can do that with the iPhone Air and the iPhone Fold. I think Apple's going in that direction where Apple kind of wants to see what consumers want and kind of perfect the technology and come out with it when it's ready, versus promising a new iPhone every single year. And I think the iPhone Air and the iPhone Fold are going to be like those special edition phones where it's like, hey, it's something new. It's all new technologies, right? It's going to be perfected over time. And whenever it's ready for release, we'll release it, whether it's every year or whether it's every 2 years. And according to a lot of reports from Bloomberg and according to a prominent leaker, Digital Chat Station, they're saying that Apple has been, observing all the feedback that they've been receiving for the iPhone Air, and they're ready to make changes. They are going to be improving the two things that we talked about initially, the battery life and the camera system. So Mark Gurman is reporting that the primary focus of the next iPhone Air will be a switch to a new 2 nanometer processor rather than the structural updates. And this chip will bring notable improvements to the iPhone Air battery life. And the second thing that Apple's working on is adding a second camera to the camera plateau. So right now we have a 48 megapixel main fusion camera. And now Apple's going to be bringing a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, because apparently, based on what reviewers are suggesting and what the feedback that Apple has received, is that people really want an ultra wide camera. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because I feel like that is probably the least used camera on the iPhone. But hey, that's just me, because according to reports in the media, people apparently really want a second ultra wide camera, and apparently Apple is working on it. They're going to be reworking that plateau system to include that second camera. But it's going to be a lot more complicated, right? Because it's already a thin and light phone, and even that plateau area has a lot of internal stuff in there, right? So they have to really miniaturize quite a bit to add in a second camera. So it's not going to be easy to do. It's going to take time. And I think that's why Apple won't be releasing an iPhone Air in 2026. Instead, we'll wait for spring of 2027 to introduce the all-new second generation iPhone Air. And I think that with this phone, Apple wasn't expecting, record sales. I think what Apple really wanted to see was, how do people respond to it? And if you look at the overall consensus and reviews, including mine, it's an amazing phone. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that it is one of the best iPhones Apple has ever made. Yes, there are a couple compromises, and that's due to its new form factor. But like with any new form factor, it's going to progress and get better over time. Like, for example, we've seen foldable phones in the market for quite some time, right? Samsung, I think, came out with it like years ago. And now we're on the seventh generation, Galaxy Z Fold. And now they actually just announced a tri-fold Galaxy phone, which I don't really know what I think about that. But the point is, with any form factor, it improves over time, right? Just look at how that Samsung Galaxy phone was in the beginning when they first announced it, and look at it now. And it's gotten so great that Apple believes in this form factor now and will finally be introducing their new iPhone Fold in 2026. And I think with iPhone Air, it's a similar thing. It's new, it's different. There are challenges that come with this new form factor, but as time progresses, we're going to see what consumers want to be in this phone. Does it make it a flop? No, it just means that it's a new phone, a new form factor, and it's going to take time for the sales to come. So it's not fair to compare the iPhone Air to, like, for example, the iPhone 17, right? Or the 17 Pro and Pro Max. We've seen these phones over the years, and they've been getting better every single year. So you can't compare the sales of the iPhone Air, an all-new form factor, to the current generation of iPhone that have almost been like 20 years in the making. So in my opinion, I think the iPhone Air is a success. It's a great phone that people who are purchasing are loving, right? And at the end of the day, that's what it really comes down to. And Apple's all about selling the best, not the most, right? And if they want to sell the most, which they're going to be working on, obviously, then it really comes down to battery life and camera upgrades, right? And if Apple can perfect it and give consumers what they want, then I think the second generation iPhone Air will be a blockbuster in terms of sales. So at the end of the day, I just want to encourage people to not really look into these media reports and really buy into the fact that this phone is a flop, because it's not. I think it's actually the future. And I think it's a glimpse of the iPhone Fold, obviously, but also what the rest of the iPhone lineup can look like, because I definitely believe that the phones will get thinner. Maybe not as thin as the iPhone Air, right? But I think they will get thinner and lighter over time. I mean, just look at the MacBook Pro, right? I remember there was a time when the MacBook Pro was really hefty and really heavy overall. And now they've become a lot thinner, not as thin as the MacBook Air, but Apple clearly learned a lot from the MacBook Air and brought a lot of the advantages to the MacBook Pro. So yeah, the MacBook Pro in comparison to the Air is thicker and heavier, but it's also lighter and thinner than it ever was before. But like always, I want to know your thoughts. Have you been using an iPhone Air? Let me know what your experience with the iPhone Air has been like in the comment section below. Let me know what things you like about it and what things Apple, should definitely work on for the second generation. And for those individuals who like the iPhone Air, but are just not ready to make that jump, what is it that's stopping you? I'd love to know your thoughts, so leave them down in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and I'll catch you in the next one.